freaking first cut. Golly.
Welcome to the First Cut Podcast, the After Dark edition. This is your halfway pod for this week's Century. Joining me to break it all down, Mark Immelman is here. Hello, Mark.
Hey, boys. How are we doing? It's PGA Tour season again. Can you believe it?
I cannot even believe it. Greg DuCharme is here. Hello, Greg.
It always happens fast. It comes at us fast, and I love getting the year started off at Kapalua. It's a really cool golf course, and boy, this week, birdies are flying.
Birdies are flying indeed. We've got a lot to get to because we've got 2 rounds to cover here on this Friday night. But before I do, quick reminder that January 13th deadline is coming quickly. If you haven't given us 20 seconds to vote for us in the best golf podcast category of the Sports Podcast Awards, we would greatly appreciate it. We want to add some hardware to the mantle this season. And if you can just take the time to do it, that'd be great. Link is in the description. You can find it on Twitter. You can find it on Instagram. Josh has been blasting it out everywhere early and often. Greg, let's start with that because you mentioned it. If you are not making birdies, and lots of them, you're losing to the field. Opening round scoring average, 2.25 strokes under par. Today, Friday, the scoring average was nearly 5 shots under par. These guys are tearing up the Plantation course.
They're tearing it up. You saw some lighter winds in this second round. Perhaps it was drying out a little bit. Not to say that it was, typically that makes a golf course more difficult as it dries out and gets firmer and faster. But in this case, the greens are still so receptive. All that's happening is you're getting a little more release on your driver. So when you hit your tee shots down there, they're catching those slopes. You end up with shorter approach shots into the greens. And the greens are so big and they're not overly firm, and you have an opportunity to stop it with wedges. So it really was perfect scoring in the second round.
The first round is where we're going to start, though, Mark, and I'm going to tee you up on our first round leader, which was Tom Hoge. He shot a 64 in the opening round with 10 birdies on the card. Round 2, it was bogey-free, but just not enough circles. He played holes 6 through 14 at even par, all pars. And that's a part of the golf course that a lot of these guys, which we'll talk about, took advantage of. He was able to salvage this round with 3 birdies in his final 4, but it looks like he's going to enter the weekend 2 shots off the lead.
Yeah, as this golf course pans out, if you look at that first round of 64, the truth about the Kapalua course is it's a resort place, and it's beautifully designed up and down the side of that mountain there, but it's built for the resort guests. And so there's big, wide fairways, big, wide greens. And typically the watchword around here on greens that are normally slow, even when conditions are dry, that if, it doesn't really place much credence on an accurate tee shot, except for 1 or 2 holes, maybe on the backside. So if you're striking the ball halfway decent with your irons, you can really get busy because the greens aren't that fast and you can putt aggressively. And I feel like that's kind of right up Tom Hoge's alley. You look at the places he's had success before, it's because he's really good with an iron club in hand. One at Pebble Beach where targets are tiny, but you can go ahead and sort of play to the strength of his game. So, coming out after the break over the festive period, no one really knows where everyone's game is, but clearly he was doing some work over the off season because the iron game hasn't waned. To that little stretch of golf there, 10 through, I would even call it 15 on the golf course, you got to make hay there because if the wind's not blowing, when the wind blows, it comes down the mountain at you there. So it's a whole lot more difficult. So today, that was like open for business with some short par 4s. So a little misstep today, but still, I think 2 solid rounds for Tom to start his season.
Yeah, 9 under round was the pace that Hoge set after Thursday's opening round. Will Zalatoris, Greg, was just 1 shot off that lead with broomstick in hand in the opening round. He gained over 3.5 strokes putting en route to a 65. The second round, a similar story to Tom Hoge, just not enough birdies, 4 of them with 1 bogey on the card. So that's a 70 when you add it all up. He is currently 5 shots off the pace.
Yeah, he definitely fell off in round 2, fell off the pace. I still think that he's in the tournament at 11 under par, 5 shots back. I don't think it puts him out. But in the second round, he just simply didn't hit it close enough. He didn't give himself the same looks that he gave himself in the opening round. And of course, in the opening round, every time he gave himself a look inside 25 feet, he was pouring it in. So perhaps he can get back on track, hit some wedge shots, which there are so many of, hit some wedge shots in there closer and take advantage of that stretch. He was 10 to 15. He was 1 over in the second round. In the first round, he was 2 under in that stretch, but fortunately bogey free. All in all, I think there's some really good news, no matter how the rest of this week pans out for Will Zalatoris. He seems to be very comfortable. He's put on some weight, gotten a little bit stronger in the gym. He put on 15 to 20 pounds of muscle, which it's always better to be stronger, especially if you were 6'2", 140 something pounds heading into the season. So he's definitely upgraded his body a little bit, and I can't wait to see how that pans out for him. So far, so good in the Sentry. It's looking like a great play for him.
Will Zalatoris looks like he took the 20 pounds that Cameron Young lost, Mark, because Cam looks rather svelte out there in Maui. He opened up with a 6 under 66. It was just one shot worse in the second round, a 67, in which he made a bogey on the par 5, 15th. That's kind of a major mistake there. But I think there's a lot of optimism about Cam Young with what he's done in the first 2 rounds. Of course, no better time to overreact to the first 2 rounds of a year than right now.
Yeah, absolutely. To that weight loss and weight gain by both Cam and Will, everyone's working on something over their off season. And to Will, he actually spoke of the fact that, the extra strength, the extra musculature is more support for the lower back, which is huge for him, because if there is kind of a something unsure about Will Zalatoris, it is the condition of the back that's been operated on. To Cameron Young, I feel like last year was sort of lackluster for a kind of guy who was at one stage contending in major championships all the time. It looked like the world was his oyster. So, he had an inconsistent, but there were bright spots at the Hero, if memory serves me, at Tiger's event. But to come out here with 2 solid rounds, you feel like around a place like this, he will be a factor. He's got a game to me that's almost built in this, cut out of the same cloth as a John Rahm, who's been successful at this place. But still, for Cam, if there's a bugaboo, it's the putter. And when you get to having to shoot, less than 26 or 7 under to contend, which is something he wants to do, you're going to have to make putts in the end. I don't care how well you hit it. So all's boding well, solid 2 rounds, but he's going to have to get busy with a putter over the weekend.
Yeah, 13 under par at the halfway point, 16 under is the lead. Couple other guys played well in the opening round, but they played even better in the second round, so I'm going to save them for just a bit. Greg, our pre-tournament favorite, Xander Schauffele, 5-1, 5.5-1, depending on where you were looking, has been slow, to say the least. 72 and 70 for Xander. If you look at the stat profile, he's losing strokes off the tee, he's losing strokes around the green, and he's nearly dead last with the putter. Those are things that I rarely say about a man who won 2 major championships last year.
I still think Xander Schauffele's swing looks pretty good, but the putter has been absolutely ice cold, which I did not expect. We talked about on Monday leading into this tournament the consistency that Xander has shown with his putting, and that has really left him. If there was one concern for Xander, he didn't have a great season with his wedges last year. He actually talked about that in his press conference leading into this tournament. His wedge play really declined. His long iron play and driver really improved. But the putter stayed consistent. He's a top 10 putter on the PGA Tour year in and year out. And he starts off today's round with a 3-putt at the very first hole, added another 3-putt later in the round, missed some 5-footers, missed some 8-footers, and a number of opportunities in that 10 to 15 foot range as well. You start adding those up, and I'm not sure with a double bogey if it gets you close to the lead, but certainly gets you. It's pretty easy for Xander to get off of that 3 under par mark. And every time you have you make a mistake like that and you put a square on the card, it just halts the momentum. When everybody else is finding birdies in bunches, you're kind of trying to fight back to even. And so a difficult position, difficult start to the year for Xander.
Yeah, currently in a tie for 44th. Remember, this is only a field of 59. So, Mark, we've got the pre-tournament favorite sitting in a tie for 44th, and we've got the guy with the second shortest odds heading into the week also sitting in T44. And, of course, I'm referring to Justin Thomas, who got a shock to the system on Thursday. Pars number 1, pars number 2, and triples number 3 to his credit. He was able to erase that and get back under par before he made the turn, but he would make 2 more bogeys later in that Thursday round. He also made a double today. So just a little bit of cleanup needed from JT so far.
Definitely. A quick thought on Xander. When you're coming into an event or season like this after the year he's had, the reality is you only kind of move backwards. And the player he's become is, everyone's going to be asking questions, including everyone around him. So there's a lot of pressure into me. I don't feel like he's really been in any competition since maybe the Tour Championship. So there hasn't been much play. I think he's played once, maybe, or maybe twice, given that he was in Japan. So maybe a little rest there. You say you like the golf swing, Greg. I feel like it's getting a bit more across the line than I'm comfortable with right now. But Chris Como and him know what they're doing. As far as Justin Thomas going, color me surprised, because the guy looked like things were really turning around. Now, maybe they have. This is just golf. Strange things happen. Because 3 at Kapalua for these guys with no wind is basically a doddle. It's a wide tee shot driver, and from there, it's some sort of scoring club, and you would expect to make 3 there. So to make triple, you got your back against the ropes real quick. Now, testament to him, he did bounce back. But Justin Thomas, the way he's been swinging, the way the game's going, the form he showed in the fall, you expect a little more than this, especially coming back to a place where he has won before. So a little surprising, but heck, it's just the first 2 rounds of the season. There's a whole lot of golf to go.
Yeah, probably another 88, maybe 95 to go for Justin Thomas. So don't get too worried just yet.
I will say this, triple and then a double, the odd mistake happens. This sort of stuff happens in golf. But to make 2 big numbers in 2 days around a golf course like this, that'll get you thinking a little bit. I'm keen to see if he's able to clean that stuff up over the weekend and make some sort of run just to kind of galvanize the confidence, because he is playing quickly shortly after this. Not going to Wailea and the Sony, but he is playing in the American Express. So I'm keen to see if he can clean up just those odds and ends there.
Yeah, we'll see him back in action very quickly. We've got a lot of movers and shakers on Friday during the second round. We've got to get you to the top of the leaderboard. The names that I've been omitting thus far, we're going to cover those and much more after a quick word from our partners. And we're back. It was a very spicy scoring day out at Kapalua. As mentioned, 5 under par was the scoring average, and Corey Connors did that alone over his final 4 holes on Friday, Greg. Back-to-back 66s for Connors has him 2 shots off the current pace, and that second 66 that he shot, that only moved him up 1 spot on the leaderboard, if that gives you any perspective for how things were today.
Yes. Fascinating how that works out. You just have to play like this with your hair on fire just to keep pace. But that back 9 is fascinating because the front 9 a little lackluster. Gets in there at just 1 under par, makes birdie at 10, and he was inside of 15 feet every hole the rest of the way. With I guess a birdie putt inside of 15 feet every hole the rest of the way, except 15 because he made a 40-footer for eagle. But, he was in there close at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, inside of 15 feet on all of those holes and missed them. If that putter just heated up a little bit more, I mean, he could have shot 10 under on the back nine alone. That's how well he was hitting the ball. So look, we talked about him on Monday as well, Rick. Corey Connors has been playing a lot. He's been playing very well all the way across the board. You know how reliable he is tee to green. And you see these little spurts like he did in the last 4 holes today, like he did on a couple of occasions in round 1 where he had 2 different stretches of 3 birdies in a row. Those are the kind of stretches you need just to keep pace with the leaders out here.
Yeah, you make up that point about the putting there, Greg. Last year, he was well outside the top 120 strokes gained on the greens on the PGA Tour. And look, this is statistically, so I'm not going to hold this as if it's biblical, but he's currently second in the field on the greens. So apparently something's going on, or maybe it's the slow greens. He's allowing himself to hit putts a little more aggressively. Because the thing about Connors, to me, whenever I've watched him play, ball's kind of limp at the hole. If you compare him to a Sam Burns, who the ball runs at the hole and it looks like he's trying to make it, oftentimes to me, it looks like Corey is trying not to miss, if that makes sense. So with a little success on the greens, yes, statistically, again, I don't know how he's feeling. This could bode really well because, to your point, the guy's a flusher. And if his putting is commensurate to his striking, look, he'll win a whole lot more often.
I would add, Rick, Mark, his putting was terrible the first half of the year in 2024. Just terrible. And I mean, it might have been the worst on the PGA Tour. It was so bad week in and week out. And in the second half of the year, it seemed to find level ground. So I imagine he's feeling a whole lot better than 120th in strokes gained putting, and especially being second this week, I'd imagine he's feeling pretty darn good.
Can I pre-bet him for next week? Yeah. Because he loves putting on those greens at Waialae. I'll tell you that. We might get more of this for the next 6 rounds. All right, Mark, I'm going to get you Maverick McNealy here. One of our newest PGA Tour winners opened with a 68, and then he goes bonkers on Friday in the second round, a bogey-free 64, and it's easy to say the numbers. Here's what he did. Birdies on 3, 4, 6, 8, and 9. He makes the turn and gets birdies at 13, 15, 17, and 18. McNealy took a while to get the first one. He's trying to cut down the time to number 2.
Yeah, this guy's playing with so much confidence, after the solid play in the fall. Well, a decent season really all around last year, coming back to the PGA Tour. But it's amazing what a win can do for one. If you think back to just a few short years ago, he was a star in college and won just about everything. And then you get on tour and you come out there and there's a lot of hubbub around you and you don't win. And then you start to question. But, he surrounded himself with some really smart people, Butch Harmon for a while and now Scott Hamilton. And you can just see the confidence bubbling. And to me, the big thing about confidence always is the confident guys, you can see they never really panic. A person who's kind of leaking confidence when they get on a bit of a slow spurt, which is likely when you're playing, oftentimes they try and force the issue. But here's the guy, he sort of knows, well, look, I'm playing well right now. If I make a few pars in a row, it's going to be okay. And he proved that to himself. So I'm looking forward to what is in store for Maverick McNealy because he's a West Coast boy. He plays the West Coast well. Pebble Beach is like a second home course to him. And Torrey Pines, he's got the kind of game because he's sneaky long. This could be really quick start to his season. So for a guy who's got all sorts of confidence, this is exciting times for Maverick McNealy.
Yeah, I like that call. Next month or so, looking really good for Maverick McNealy. Now, there are 2 guys at the top here, a solo leader at 16 under, a man in solo second at 15 under. Let's start there, Greg. It's Collin Morikawa, who late in the day finished off his 65, which included 5 straight birdies from 13 through 17 before making a par on number 18. Hideki Matsuyama, who we'll get to, held that clubhouse lead for a while. Collin looked like he was going to have a chance to tie just late here as the second to last group to finish up. But this has been a stellar start for somebody who did everything but win last year.
Yes. And, he's really cleaned up some of the areas of his game, especially his short game, which was put unfortunately on display for him a couple of years ago when he had a 7-shot lead on the back nine and didn't come away with a win. His record out here is phenomenal. The only thing missing is that trophy, just like 2024. And he yet again has himself right in position for another win. You look at the round when we got done with round one, Collin Morikawa was the guy I was looking at, and the reason is it's the way he went about it. On the front nine in the first round, he makes birdies at the 2 par 5s, bonus birdie at number 2, but gets the 2 par 5s. Then he gets that stretch 12, 13, 14, and 15. All of those birdies came with wedges from inside. I think it was 102 yards, if I remember correctly. He didn't have to do anything crazy to shoot that 66, just simply avoid mistakes. And then he comes out in round 2 and he starts adding in some better, longer approach shots. The approach shot that he had into 17 with the 7-iron was on an absolute string. So Collin Morikawa right now looks like the most complete player in the field. And it doesn't look like a guy that doesn't putt well. It doesn't look like a guy with a short game issue. He doesn't look like a specialist. And he was a specialist that won 2 major championships. So this is a scary sight for everybody else on the PGA Tour right now.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Quick, Rick, one thought on Collin. When I watch players, oftentimes they'll hit like one shot and you're like, all right, they know what's up. And I know I'd been critical of Collin last year, despite what he did, because I've seen Collin when he was at his best. And, I think back to maybe 2 years ago, whenever JT won the PGA at Southern Hills, the week prior, he hit a 5-wood on a par 5 at the Byron Nelson that I saw the shot and I'm like, I'm betting this guy next week. and I remember making the call in the one and done because he just hit this 5-wood that was like the weight came off, the weight climbed, the control, it was biblical. And Greg spoke of the 7-iron down 17. Now, when I'd watched Collin here recently, a lot of the balls with irons he was hitting were on the green and sort of hole high, but they didn't have a lot of conviction, because this guy at one stage, his proximity was off the charts. I mean, he'd line up anything if he had the right number. Otherwise, he'd just play safely to the middle of the green. And 17 today, there's a bit of a kind of crosswind. It's all carry with a barranca down the left-hand side, front left hole location. If you whiff one and the wind gets it, even though the winds were light, you are dropping. And it's really easy from where he was to just peel one off somewhere to the right front side of the green. And he hit this thing in between clubs, no doubt, right? So if it's a full club, then you're kind of confident. So he had to go in there and sort of massage a 7-iron a little bit from 180 something down the hill and hit this thing to 4 feet or whatever it was, but it never left the flag. And I'm like, whoa, this looks more like Collin Morikawa, who won 2 majors, World Golf Championships, because that was kind of his game. So I'm so on board with what Greg says. I mean, to me, that shot kind of is the shot that may just be the catalyst for what's upcoming.
5 previous trips to Kapalua: T7, T7, T5, runner-up, T5. Certainly looks like he's going to get another top finish this week, but he's not the leader going in to the weekend. Mark, you get first crack at Hideki Matsuyama, who has put together a pair of 65s. His Friday 65 was bogey-free. He also did not take advantage of number 18, but he had a birdie streak from 4, 5, and 6. And then he just kind of sprinkled in a bunch of birdies the rest of the way. He's putting well. He's got the confidence that only Hideki can have, right? The guy that looks like he's never hit anything off the center of the club face, but he is going to be our solo leader going into the weekend.
I'm going to sound crazy here, but I can never figure Hideki out. I just can't, because everything about the guy, when you watch him, you're like, this guy should be a god. and he kind of is. He flips onto god mode every so often, but then all of a sudden he'll have moments where it's just disastrous. Yeah, and that I think back to the last time I saw him under pressure was at the President's Cup, where one day he could miss, and the next day he couldn't hit it. He couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. And it's the strangest thing. So I kind of never really know what to think of him. The one thing is for certain, though, which has always been a little bit of a weakness, if anything, is I get the sense that his comfort level around the greens is elevated. And so when he is a little off, he's able to sort of carry those bad ball striking days. That's certainly what I saw at the President's Cup when he was alongside, I believe it was Sungjae, maybe, in four balls or foursomes or whatever the case might be. So now on those not so good ball striking days, he can keep himself in it. So maybe this is something. But then I'll also say this: last year, kind of around this time, the way he played there in the final round at the Genesis at Riviera to win was biblical. So again, I'm sort of like, what can I expect? You would think he's going to really accelerate over the weekend, but I'm just unsure. The one bright spot is the flat stick. And that's kind of where I'm going to live.
It's a one-shot lead, Greg, and dare I say, dangerously close to being a lot more than that. So the putter, which has been great this week, he's picked up about 2.5 strokes putting. He missed the 4.5 footer for birdie on 14. He missed the 5.5 footer on 15. He 2 putts from 17 feet on 16, no problem there, and then 3 putts on 18. Maybe we don't give him all of those. Maybe we give him 1 or 2 of those, but there were certainly, even after a pair of 65s, 130 going into the weekend, a couple of strokes left out there.
Yes, it's like, it's like Corey Connors, who made 4 pars on the back nine. He should have birdied every hole out there. But this was, you could actually give him all of those, Rick, and it wouldn't be, we're talking about 5 footers here. I know you're going to miss some throughout the year, but it's not a huge ask that the guy that's leading the tournament make all of those. I'm very curious about the new putter that he has in play. He's got the center shafted putter in play. It's still a blade style, which he's always used, but he hasn't really deviated much from the typical style. He has switched putters, but I haven't seen him switch the neck style like this. So it's a little bit of a unique look, but it's working pretty well for the most part in these first 2 rounds.
That's what he is, though. This is part of the reason why I get kind of confused, because at Memphis, he switched putters beginning in the week and couldn't miss there in Memphis on those Bermuda greens. And
then switched again.
Yeah, exactly. The week thereafter. And that style putter had a similar style head. It wasn't center shafted. I will say I saw a couple of the misses here late. Each putt that he looked, because oftentimes you'll see with Matsuyama, just like the iron game, he is quick to walk when he hasn't started the ball on line. And the couple that he missed, he was holding the follow through as if he hit his line decently. So, yeah, sometimes you can misread these greens over here. We saw Ludwig Oberg do it a bunch, or at least I did today. So there's some of that, but he's weird because he's changing clubs constantly. I mean, there's almost a new club in his bag every week. And but that's just sort of the player he is, and that's why he's got me completely flummoxed half of the time.
If you ever see him on a Tuesday or Wednesday, Greg, on the putting greens, it's like 6 different putters. To me, they all look identical. I can't tell the difference. There must be little differences in the specs, but yeah, constantly tinkering, and they mostly look the same to me.
And it seems like no matter what he does, he's just flat out good. Yeah. And like you were saying with Maverick McNealy about this stretch coming up, I was thinking about this today watching him. Like, well, this makes a lot of sense because I think short game and wedge play is really underrated at Kapalua. I think it's a really important aspect of the game here. And for such a long golf course, you wouldn't expect it to be the case. But so many shots come into these greens with wedges. Hideki's great at that, led the field in strokes gained around the green last year with that. At the Genesis Invitational, he made like 7 short game birdies in that final round. And it was, you forget about it all because of the 2 shots he hit at 15 and 16. So thinking ahead to some of these West Coast events where short game's really important, you got to love Hideki. Then you go to the Florida swing where ball striking gets really important, and you see some guys that maybe aren't the greatest putters have some more success on the greens because you got Bermuda. It's usually really tight and fast and true, and the ball strikers tend to prevail. Well, Hideki the way he's looking right now, he fits that category too. So this could be a great first half of the season for Hideki, all leading into the Masters, where he's also won before.
I'm glad you're so confident, because I'm like, golly.
I'm very confident in him. I'm so impressed. I know Rick has been for a while too. So I can't speak high enough of Hideki right now.
Well, we've got a couple of flushers right at the top of this board. Hideki Matsuyama, Collin Morikawa. Let's throw Corey Connors in the mix. Let's throw Tom Hoge in there. McNealy's actually hit it well this week, but probably not known for that part of his game. And it is Las Vegas that sees the big two, Hideki Matsuyama and Collin Morikawa, as the favorites. They're not runaway favorites. Still plenty of golf to be played. Hideki gets a little bit of an edge with a one-shot lead at plus 240. Collin Morikawa at plus 260. Then a gap to Corey Connors, who sits kind of by himself at 8-1. Everybody else is 11-1 or longer. So that's McNealy at 11-1, Wyndham Clark at 14, Thomas Dietrich and Cameron Young at 16-1 apiece. So, Mark, this is shaping up to be flushers only this weekend.
I tell you what, I would not be averse to put a little flutter on Wyndham Clark. He just looked. The thing about Clark, he hits the ball so hard, and I feel like sometimes he gets himself a bit tangled up because he's got a lot of vertical change in his golf swing. It's his power source, but sometimes I feel like it gets a little overdone in transition. But the driver just looks like it's in front of him, and it's free. And he didn't look like he was laboring with that club in his hand. And when he drives it well, we've seen what he can do. I mean, he just basically turns every golf course into driver wedge kind of thing. And he's so good on and around the green. So, yeah, I know you got a few really stars out in the front. And I think Colin's going to take some beating. Again, I'm on the fence with Hideki. But Wyndham Clark, I feel like that number is not a bad bet.
3 shots back, he made 8 birdies in his final 10 holes on Friday. So certainly playing with a lot of confidence and a lot of strength heading into the weekend. Greg, when you look at this betting board, what sticks out to you?
Well, of course, the top 2 guys. I'd probably go Morikawa slightly ahead of Hideki. I just think he's a little more complete right now. But you go down Maverick McNealy, who, I mean, many of the birdies that he made today came from long range. His iron play was the best in the field today, and it didn't come from wedge shots. It came from outside of 150 yards. He made 4 or 5 birdies today from that range. Usually a weakness in his game. I love what he does with the flat stick, and I know that's going to be a huge factor heading into this week. And the last guy that I'd mention, I agree with Mark on Wyndham Clark. He looks really strong right now, but Keegan Bradley has himself in contention. I think it's easy to forget about Keegan sitting there at 18-1, but when he gets in the heat of battle, he's only 3 shots back. He is fierce. So I always look at Keegan as, if he's in it, it's great. I don't know how often he's going to get in it, but when he gets himself in this position, he finishes very strong. So I wouldn't forget about him either.
18-1 for Keegan Bradley. If you think that Xander Schauffele can go 52-52, you can get, I think it was 5,000 to 1. What did 2,000 to 1. If you think he can pull that off, if it wasn't Hideki or Morikawa. So I think we kind of got our answers here for Calvin. This might be Calvin Klein, Calvin K. I think we got our answers. He says if you have to pick somebody to win on Sunday, you can't pick Hideki or Morikawa. I think I heard Wyndham Clark. I think Greg was kind of giving us a little maybe Clark, maybe Maverick McNealy. I refuse to answer that because it's gonna be Collin, obviously.
Yeah. That's the smart answer.
That would be very nice.
I just hope Collin doesn't get himself all tangled up there short of the par 5 15th like he did a couple of years ago, Rick.
I really hope not.
He's not going to.
He needs one. It's time. It's time for Collin, and it's time for us to go. I'm going to go on HQ, and I'm going to continue to talk about this, but we are going to come back on Sunday, and we're going to recap moving day. We're going to recap the final rounds. We're going to have a winner of the century before. Here we go. We just roll right into the Sony Open. We're in it now. Big thanks to producer Josh. He does all the hard work behind the scenes. Mark Immelman, available at Mark_Immelman. Greg DuCharme, the real GFD. You can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut. We'll catch you next time.